There is a room where no one speaks, yet everyone understands. The air is thick with intention, heavy with the weight of words that will never be said. In this room, power does not announce itself. It does not need to. It simply exists, like gravity, pulling everything toward its center. You have been in this room before. Perhaps you did not recognize it. Perhaps you thought it was a dinner table, an office, a bedroom. But it was that room. The room where silence commands more than any voice ever could. Watch closely now. A man enters. He does not rush. His footsteps are measured, deliberate, as if each step has been rehearsed in the theater of his mind. He sits. He does not greet anyone. He does not smile. He simply exists in the space. And somehow, the space rearranges itself around him. Conversations that were loud become whispers. Laughter that was free becomes cautious. He has said nothing, yet he has said everything. This is the first lesson. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the most sophisticated form of it. Before we continue, a warning. The knowledge that's about to be shared cannot be unlearned. It will permanently change the way you see human relationships. If you're ready to abandon comfortable illusions and see what's behind the stage, subscribe now. Because this isn't just a video. It's the beginning of your journey under the mask. Now let us begin. The human animal is a curious creature. We are told from birth that communication is about words, about speaking, about expressing ourselves. But this is a beautiful lie, a comfortable fiction that allows society to function without descending into chaos. The truth, the one that lives in the shadows of every interaction, is that words are often the least important part of any exchange. They are the costume, the makeup, the set design. But the real performance happens in the silence between them. Consider the child who learns, long before language fully forms, that crying brings comfort, that silence brings attention of a different kind. The infant who discovers that stillness can be more powerful than sound. This is not taught. This is known. It lives in the bones, in the blood, in the ancient part of the brain that remembers when we were prey and predator both, when survival depended on reading what was not said, on sensing danger in the absence of sound. Now imagine a woman at a negotiation table. She has prepared her arguments, her data, her compelling reasons. Across from her sits someone who has prepared nothing, or so it seems. The meeting begins. She speaks. She presents. She fills the air with words, with logic, with passion. And the person across from her simply listens. Minutes pass. She continues. Still silence. She begins to feel it now. That creeping sensation, like cold water rising slowly around her ankles, then her knees, then her chest. The silence is not passive. It is active. It is doing something to her. She starts to doubt. Did she say too much? Not enough. Is her argument weak? She cannot tell, because the silence reveals nothing, and in revealing nothing, it reveals everything about her. This is the second lesson. Silence creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. People will rush to fill it. They will offer more than they intended. They will reveal more than they planned. They will negotiate against themselves, lowering their price, softening their demands, all to escape the unbearable pressure of that empty space. But there is something deeper here, something that touches the very core of what it means to be human. We are social creatures. Our brains are wired for connection, for reciprocity, for the dance of give and take. When someone speaks to us, every fiber of our being expects a response. It is written into our neural architecture. The absence of that response creates a kind of cognitive dissonance, a glitch in the matrix of social expectation. And in that glitch, power shifts. The master manipulator understands this at a level that goes beyond conscious thought. They feel it the way a musician feels rhythm, the way a painter sees light. They know that in any interaction, the person who is most comfortable with silence holds the cards. Not because silence is inherently powerful, but because most people are terrified of it. We fill silence with nervous laughter, with unnecessary explanations, with confessions we never meant to make. We do this automatically, compulsively, because silence feels like judgment, like rejection, like the cold void of being unseen. There is a story, old as civilization itself, about a king who ruled not through proclamations, but through pauses. When his advisors brought him problems, he would listen, then say nothing. Days would pass. The advisors would return, having solved the problems themselves, desperate to fill the silence with solutions, with proof of their worth. The king, through his silence, had trained his entire court to work harder, think deeper, and compete more fiercely for the reward of his acknowledgement. He did not need to command. His silence was the command. But let us go deeper still, into the psychology of why this works, why silence can be more devastating than any insult, more compelling than any argument. The human mind is a meaning-making machine. We cannot help but interpret, analyze, create narratives. When someone is silent, we do not simply accept the silence. We fill it with meaning. We project onto it our fears, our insecurities, our guilt. A parent's silence becomes disappointment. A lover's silence becomes withdrawal. A boss's silence becomes disapproval. And here is the terrible beauty of it. We are usually wrong. The silence might mean nothing at all, but we cannot accept that. We need it to mean something, and so we create that meaning ourselves, and then we react to our own creation. This is the third lesson. Silence is a mirror. It reflects back whatever the other person brings to it. The guilty see judgment, the insecure see rejection, the anxious see anger, and the manipulator, the one who understands this game, simply holds the mirror steady and watches as people reveal themselves completely. Think about the last time someone gave you the silent treatment. Remember how it felt. Not the silence itself, but what happened inside your mind. The stories you told yourself. The reasons you invented. The ways you tried to interpret every small gesture, every micro-expression, searching desperately for a clue to break the code. You were not responding to what was actually happening. You were responding to what you feared was happening. And in that fear, you gave away your power. Now, let us examine the anatomy of silence as a weapon. Not all silences are created equal. There's the silence of contemplation, warm and inviting, that says, I am thinking about what you said. I am taking you seriously. There's the silence of comfort, the kind that exists between old friends who need no words. But then there is the other kind, the cold silence, the calculated silence, the silence that cuts. This silence has a texture. If you could touch it, it would feel like ice, smooth and hard and unforgiving. It has a temperature. It lowers the warmth in a room by degrees that no thermometer could measure. It has a weight. It presses down on the chest, makes breathing feel like work. This is not accidental. This is designed. The person wielding this silence knows exactly what they are doing. They have chosen it the way a surgeon chooses a scalpel, with precision and purpose. Watch how it unfolds. Two people in conflict. One is angry, voice raised, words tumbling out in a torrent of emotion. The other says nothing, just looks. Or perhaps does not even look. Perhaps they turn away, attend to something else, check their phone, examine their nails. The message is clear without being spoken. You are not worth my words. You are not worth my attention. You are not worth my energy. And the angry person, the one who started with power, with the force of their emotion, begins to deflate. Because rage needs a target. It needs resistance. Silence offers neither. It is like punching fog. The energy goes nowhere. It dissipates. And what is left is exhaustion and shame. This is the fourth lesson. Silence can be a form of violence. Not physical, but psychological. It can wound without leaving a mark. It can destroy without making a sound. And because it is invisible, because there is no evidence, the person who wields it can always claim innocence. I did nothing. I said nothing. How can silence be harmful? But those who have been on the receiving end know. They know the way it hollows you out, makes you question your own reality, your own worth. There is a woman who learned this lesson young. Her mother was a master of the silent treatment. Not the kind that lasted hours, but the kind that lasted days, sometimes weeks. The child would come home from school, excited to share something, and would be met with nothing. Not anger, not explanation, just absence. The mother would move through the house like a ghost, preparing meals, doing laundry, existing in the same physical space, but emotionally unreachable. The child learned to read the silence, to parse its meanings. This silence meant I am disappointed. That silence meant you have hurt me. This other silence meant you were being tested, and the child learned to do anything, say anything, become anything to break that silence, to earn back the warmth of acknowledgement. Years later, as an adult, this woman finds herself in relationships where she cannot tolerate even a moment of quiet. She fills every space with words, with questions, with reassurance seeking. She has been trained, conditioned, to fear silence as the ultimate punishment, and she does not even know why. The memory lives in her body, not her mind. It is a wound that never fully healed, and it shapes every interaction she has. This is what silence can do. It can program a person. It can become the invisible hand that guides their behavior long after the original silence has ended. And the cruelest part is that the person doing the programming might not even be aware of what they are doing. They might simply be repeating a pattern they learned, passing down a legacy of emotional manipulation without conscious intent. But let us not paint silence only as a weapon. That would be incomplete, and incompleteness is the enemy of understanding. Silence can also be a shield, a sanctuary, a form of self-preservation. There are times when silence is not manipulation but wisdom, when words would only make things worse, when speaking would be casting pearls before swine, when the other person is not ready or willing or able to hear what needs to be said. Consider the person who has been gaslit, whose words are constantly twisted, whose reality is constantly questioned. For this person, silence becomes survival. To speak is to give ammunition. To explain is to provide material for distortion. So they learn to be quiet, to keep their truth close, to wait for a safer moment that may never come. This silence is not power. It is protection. It is the turtle pulling into its shell, the deer freezing in the forest, the ancient survival mechanism that says sometimes the best defense is to become invisible. This is the fifth lesson. Context is everything. The same silence can be a sword or a shield, depending on who wields it and why. To understand silence, you must understand the relationship, the history, the power dynamics at play. You must ask not just what is being done, but why, and to what end. Now let us turn our attention to a different aspect of silence, one that is perhaps even more subtle, even more insidious. This is the silence of omission, the things that are never said, the truths that are carefully avoided, the questions that are never asked. This silence does not announce itself. It does not create obvious discomfort. It simply shapes reality by deciding what gets to exist in the conversation and what does not. Imagine a family dinner. Everyone is talking, laughing, sharing stories. But there is one topic that is never mentioned. Perhaps it is the father's drinking. Perhaps it is the daughter's eating disorder. Perhaps it is the son who left and never came back. Everyone knows. Everyone is thinking about it, but no one speaks it. And in that collective silence, the unspoken thing grows larger, more powerful, more defining than anything that is actually said. It becomes the elephant in the room, and soon the room exists only to contain the elephant. Everything else is just decoration. This is the sixth lesson. What is not said can be more important than what is said. Silence shapes the boundaries of acceptable reality. It decides what is real and what is forbidden. And those who control what can and cannot be spoken control the very fabric of shared experience. In organizations, this plays out in fascinating ways. There are companies where everyone knows the product is failing, the strategy is flawed, the leadership is incompetent, but no one says it. Not in meetings, not in emails, not in the carefully worded reports that dance around the truth without ever touching it. Why? Because there's an unspoken rule, a silence that has been enforced through subtle punishments and rewards. The person who speaks the uncomfortable truth is not thanked for their honesty. They are labeled difficult, negative, not a team player. They are passed over for promotions. They are gradually frozen out, and everyone else watches and learns. The lesson is clear. Silence is safety. Truth is danger. And so the organization continues on its path. Everyone complicit in the collective delusion, until reality can no longer be denied and everything collapses. And then, in the aftermath, people will say, how did this happen? Why didn't anyone speak up? Why didn't anyone see this coming? But they did see. They just chose silence. Or perhaps silence chose them. This brings us to a deeper question, one that cuts to the heart of human nature. Why are we so susceptible to silence? Why does it have such power over us? The answer lies in our evolutionary history. In the millions of years, when we lived in small tribes where social cohesion meant survival and ostracism meant death, to be cast out, to be ignored, to be treated as if you do not exist, this was not just uncomfortable. It was a death sentence. And so we evolved to be exquisitely sensitive to social rejection, to the withdrawal of attention and acknowledgement. When someone gives us the silent treatment, when they withdraw their presence, even while physically present, it triggers something primal in us. The amygdala, that ancient part of the brain responsible for detecting threats, lights up as if we are in physical danger. Because to our evolutionary programming, we are. Social death and physical death were once the same thing. Our modern rational mind knows the difference, but our emotional brain does not. It responds with panic, with desperate attempts to restore connection, with a willingness to do almost anything to end the silence. This is the seventh lesson. Silence works because it hijacks our survival instincts. It speaks directly to the most primitive parts of our brain, bypassing logic and reason. This is why it is so effective, and why it is so difficult to defend against. You cannot reason your way out of a primal fear. But there is another dimension to this, one that is perhaps even more profound. Silence is also the space where we meet ourselves. In the absence of external noise, external validation, external distraction, we are left alone with our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own truth. And for many people, this is terrifying. We have become so accustomed to constant stimulation, constant connection, constant noise, that we have lost the ability to be comfortable in our own presence. Think about the last time you were truly alone with yourself. No phone, no music, no television, no book, just you and your thoughts. How long did you last before reaching for a distraction? For most people, it is measured in minutes, sometimes seconds. We have become afraid of our own minds, of what we might discover if we actually listen to ourselves. And so we fill every moment with noise, with activity, with anything that keeps us from having to face the silence within. This is the eighth lesson. The person who is comfortable with silence, both external and internal, has a tremendous advantage. They are not running from themselves. They are not desperate for validation. They can sit with discomfort, with uncertainty, with the unknown. And this makes them nearly impossible to manipulate through silence, because silence holds no terror for them. It is simply space. Neutral, empty, waiting to be filled or not, as they choose. Now let us examine how silence operates in the realm of seduction and romance, where it takes on yet another character, another set of meanings. Here, silence is not just about power or manipulation. It is about mystery, about desire, about the space between people that creates tension and attraction. There's a man who understands this instinctively. When he meets someone he is interested in, he does not flood them with attention, with messages, with constant availability. He creates space. He responds, but not immediately. He engages, but not completely. He reveals, but not everything. And in that space, in that silence, the other person's imagination goes to work. They begin to wonder, what is he thinking? What is he doing? Why hasn't he responded? And in that wondering, desire grows. Because desire is not about having. It is about wanting. And you cannot want what is always available, always present, always speaking. This is the ninth lesson. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates desire. The person who is always available, always responsive, always eager, becomes predictable. And predictability is the death of attraction. But the person who knows when to be present and when to withdraw, when to speak and when to be silent, becomes endlessly fascinating. Not because of who they are, necessarily, but because of what they withhold. But there's a dark side to this, as there is to all forms of power. When silence is used deliberately to create anxiety, to keep someone off balance, to make them constantly question where they stand, it crosses from seduction into manipulation. This is the person who goes silent not because they are busy or need space, but because they know it will make you chase them. They know it will make you doubt yourself. They know it will give them control. There's a woman who experienced this. In the beginning, he was attentive, present, communicative. But gradually, the silences began. He would disappear for days without explanation. then return as if nothing had happened. She would ask what was wrong, and he would say nothing. Everything is fine. You are being too sensitive. But the silences continued, and they began to follow a pattern. They came whenever she expressed a need, whenever she asked for more, whenever she tried to define the relationship. The message was clear, though never spoken. Your needs make me withdraw. Your expectations push me away. If you want me to stay, you must ask for nothing. And so she learned to silence herself, to need nothing, to expect nothing, to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention he chose to give. She became smaller and smaller, quieter and quieter, until she almost disappeared. And still it was not enough, because the silence was never about her behavior. It was about control. It was about keeping her in a state of perpetual uncertainty, perpetual striving, perpetual fear of abandonment. This is the 10th lesson. When silence is used as a tool of control, it becomes abuse, not the kind that leaves bruises, but the kind that leaves scars on the soul. It teaches you that you are too much, that your needs are burdens, that love is something you must earn through perfect behavior and constant self-erasure. And the cruelest part is that you cannot point to anything concrete. There are no insults to quote, no threats to report, just silence, just absence, just the slow erosion of your sense of self. Let us shift now to another arena where silence plays a crucial role, the realm of leadership and authority. Here, silence takes on a different quality, a different purpose. The leader who speaks constantly, who fills every meeting with their voice, who must always have the last word, reveals their insecurity. They are trying to prove their worth through volume, through presence, through the sheer force of their personality. But the truly powerful leader understands that silence is a form of authority. Watch a master leader in action. They ask a question, then they wait. They do not rush to fill the silence with their own answer. They do not interrupt. They simply hold the space and wait for others to step into it. And something remarkable happens. People begin to think more deeply. They begin to take ownership. They begin to rise to the occasion, because the silence creates a vacuum of responsibility that someone must fill. This is the 11th lesson. Silence can be an act of trust and empowerment. It says, I believe you have the answer. I believe you are capable. I do not need to rescue you with my words. And paradoxically, this silence creates more loyalty, more respect, more genuine authority than any amount of commanding or directing ever could. But there is a fine line here, as there is with all uses of silence. The leader who is silent because they trust their team is very different from the leader who is silent because they have nothing to say, or because they are avoiding responsibility, or because they are playing power games. Intent matters. Context matters. And the people on the receiving end can usually tell the difference, even if they cannot articulate how they know. There is a story about a CEO who was known for his silence in meetings. He would sit at the head of the table, listening as his executives presented their ideas, their strategies, their concerns. And he would say nothing. Just listen. Take notes occasionally. Nod sometimes. But rarely speak. At first, people found it unnerving. They would present, then wait for his response, and the silence would stretch out until someone else would jump in, trying to fill it, trying to interpret it, trying to win his approval through more words, more explanations, more justifications. But over time, something shifted. People began to prepare more thoroughly, knowing that their ideas would be met with silence, with consideration, with the weight of his attention. They began to think through their proposals more carefully, to anticipate questions, to do the work of critical analysis themselves rather than relying on him to do it for them. The quality of thinking in the organization improved dramatically, not because he was a brilliant strategist, though he was, but because his silence demanded excellence. It created a space where mediocrity could not hide behind charisma or fast talking or political maneuvering. This is the 12th lesson. Silence raises the bar. It demands substance over style. It forces people to bring their best because there's nowhere to hide in silence. It reveals everything. Now, let us explore the silence that exists in conflict, in confrontation, in those moments when emotions run high and words become weapons. Here, silence can be either the wisest choice or the most cowardly, depending on what drives it. There is a couple in the middle of an argument. She is speaking, her voice rising with frustration, with hurt, with the accumulated weight of things left unsaid for too long. He is silent. But what kind of silence is this? Is it the silence of someone who is listening deeply, who is taking in her words, who is trying to understand before responding? Or is it the silence of someone who has checked out, who is waiting for the storm to pass, who has learned that if he just stays quiet long enough, she will exhaust herself and the whole thing will blow over without him having to actually engage? The difference is everything. The first silence is an act of respect, of emotional maturity, of recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is simply bear witness to another person's pain without trying to fix it or defend yourself or make it about you. The second silence is an act of abandonment, of emotional cowardice, of refusing to show up for the relationship when it is difficult. And here is the terrible thing. From the outside, they look the same. Both involve not speaking. Both involve stillness. But the felt experience is completely different. She can feel the difference, even if she cannot explain it. One silence feels like being held. The other feels like being dropped. This is the 13th lesson. Silence is not neutral. It carries the energy of the person holding it. It can be warm or cold, present or absent, engaged or detached. And we feel this at a level that goes beyond words, beyond logic. We feel it in our bodies, in the tightness of our chest, or the relaxation of our shoulders, in the way our nervous system responds to the quality of another person's attention or lack thereof. Let us go deeper still, into the realm of collective silence, the silence of societies, of cultures, of entire generations. There are things that whole communities agree not to speak about, traumas that are buried, injustices that are ignored, truths that are too uncomfortable to acknowledge. And this collective silence shapes reality in profound ways. Think about the silence around mental illness in many cultures, where depression is weakness, where anxiety is failure, where asking for help is shame. People suffer in silence, isolated in their pain, believing they are alone, believing something is fundamentally wrong with them. And the silence perpetuates itself, because if no one speaks, then everyone assumes they're the only one struggling, and so they continue to stay silent, and the cycle continues. Or think about the silence around abuse, around addiction, around all the ways that families can be broken while maintaining a perfect facade. The children who grow up in these environments learn that there is what is real and what is spoken, and these are two different things. They learn to live in the gap between them, to navigate a world where everyone pretends everything is fine while the house is burning down around them. This is the 14th lesson. Collective silence creates collective delusion. It allows dysfunction to masquerade as normalcy. It makes the abnormal seem inevitable, unchangeable, just the way things are. And breaking this silence, speaking the unspeakable, naming the unnamed, this is one of the most radical and dangerous acts a person can undertake, because the silence is not maintained by accident. It is maintained by a complex system of rewards and punishments, of social pressure and internalized shame, of fear and complicity. There is a man who broke the silence in his family. For generations, there had been a pattern. The men drunk, the women endured, the children learned to be quiet, to not make waves, to accept this as normal. He was the first to say this is not okay. This is not normal. This needs to change. And the response was not gratitude. It was rage. He was accused of being disloyal, of airing dirty laundry, of betraying the family. Because the silence was not just about keeping a secret. It was about maintaining a system, a way of being, an identity. To break the silence was to threaten the entire structure. But he persisted, and slowly, painfully, things began to shift. Others found the courage to speak. The silence lost its power, and while the family was never the same, while relationships were damaged and some were lost entirely, there was also healing. There was truth. There was the possibility of something different. This is the 15th lesson. Breaking silence has a cost. It is not free. It is not easy. But sometimes it is necessary. Sometimes the cost of silence is higher than the cost of speaking, even when speaking means losing everything you thought you knew. Now let us turn our attention to a more subtle form of silence, the silence of listening. True listening, deep listening, is a rare and precious thing. Most of what we call listening is actually waiting to speak, or formulating our response, or judging what is being said, or thinking about something else entirely. But real listening requires a kind of silence that is active, engaged, fully present. Think about the last time someone truly listened to you. Not just heard your words, but listened with their whole being. You could feel it, could you not? The quality of their attention, the way they were not just quiet, but quiet in a way that created space for you to unfold, to explore, to discover what you actually think and feel. This kind of listening is a gift. It is an act of generosity and courage, because to truly listen means to set aside your own agenda, your own need to be right or helpful or impressive, and simply be present for another person's experience. This is the 16th lesson. The silence of deep listening is one of the most powerful forms of connection available to us. It says you matter. Your experience matters. I am here with you. And in a world that is constantly shouting, constantly demanding attention, constantly trying to fill every space with noise, this kind of silence is revolutionary. But here too, there's a shadow side. There is the person who listens not to understand, but to gather information, who is silent not because they care, but because they are calculating, who creates the appearance of deep listening while actually cataloging your vulnerabilities, your fears, your secrets, to be used later as leverage or ammunition. There's a woman who learned this the hard way. She met someone who seemed like the perfect listener, patient, attentive, never interrupting, never judging. She felt so seen, so understood, that she opened up completely. She shared things she had never told anyone. Her insecurities, her past mistakes, her deepest fears. And he held it all with such apparent care, such seeming compassion, until the day they had a disagreement. And then, with surgical precision, he used everything she had told him against her. Every vulnerability became a weapon. Every fear became a threat. Every secret became a source of shame. He had been listening, yes, but not with love, with strategy. His silence had been a trap, and she had walked into it willingly, gratefully, believing she had finally found someone who understood her. This is the 17th lesson. Not all listening is benevolent. Silence can be a form of reconnaissance. The person who never shares, who only receives, who creates intimacy through listening but never through revealing. This person may be building a dossier rather than a relationship. Trust must be mutual. Vulnerability must be reciprocal. Otherwise, it is not connection. It is exploitation. Let us now examine the silence that exists in the space between thought and speech, that crucial moment where we decide what to say and what to keep to ourselves. This is where character is revealed, where integrity lives or dies, because we all have thoughts that should not become words, judgments, cruelties, impulses. The question is not whether we have them. The question is what we do with them. There's a kind of silence that is self-control, that is wisdom, that is the recognition that not every thought deserves to be spoken. Not every feeling needs to be expressed. Not every truth needs to be told. This silence protects relationships. It creates space for grace, for forgiveness, for the understanding that we are all flawed and struggling and doing our best. But there is another kind of silence in this space. The silence of inauthenticity, of people-pleasing, of saying what others want to hear rather than what is true. This silence erodes the self. It creates a split between who you are and who you pretend to be. And over time, the gap widens until you no longer know which is real. This is the 18th lesson. There is a difference between discretion and dishonesty, between choosing your words carefully and hiding your truth entirely. The first is maturity. The second is self-abandonment, and learning to tell the difference, learning to know when silence serves you and when it betrays you. This is one of the great challenges of being human. Now, let us explore the silence that comes at the end of things. The silence of goodbye, the silence of death, the silence of endings that cannot be undone. This silence has a finality to it, a weight that is different from all other silences. It is not a pause. It is a period. It is the last word that is not a word at all. Think about the silence in a hospital room when the machines stop, when the breathing ceases, when the person who was there is suddenly, irrevocably not. This silence is absolute. It is the silence of absence, of loss, of the unbridgeable gap. between the living and the dead. And in that silence, we confront the ultimate truth, that we are temporary, that everything ends. That silence is where we all eventually arrive. But even here, even in this most final of silences, there is meaning. There is the silence of a life well lived, where the absence speaks of presence, where what is gone is felt precisely because it mattered so much. And there's the silence of a life unlived, where the absence is just emptiness, where nothing is felt because nothing was there to begin with. This is the 19th lesson. How we live determines the quality of our final silence. Will it be a silence that echoes with love, with impact, with the ripples of a life that touched others? Or will it be a silence that is simply empty, a space that closes without leaving a mark? There is a man who sits by his father's grave every year on the anniversary of his death. He does not pray. He does not speak. He simply sits in silence. And in that silence, he feels closer to his father than he ever did when his father was alive. Because when his father was alive, there was always noise, always conflict, always the things they could not say to each other, the love they could not express, the forgiveness they could not offer. But in death, in silence, all of that falls away. What remains is the essential thing, the bond, the connection, the love that was always there but could never find words. This is the 20th lesson. Sometimes silence is the only language adequate for what we feel. Words are too small, too clumsy, too limited. Silence can hold what language cannot. It can express what is inexpressible. It can honor what is sacred. But let us return now to the practical, to the everyday uses of silence in the theater of human interaction. Because while we have explored the profound and the philosophical, silence is also a tool that is used constantly in mundane ways, in negotiations and sales and persuasion, and all the small manipulations that make up daily life. The salesperson who presents a price and then says nothing, knowing that the first person to speak loses. The therapist who lets the silence stretch, knowing that the client will eventually fill it with truth. The poker player who maintains a perfect blank expression, giving nothing away. The job interviewer who asks a question and then waits, watching how the candidate handles the discomfort of empty air. These are all applications of the same principle. Silence creates pressure, and pressure reveals truth. The person who can sit comfortably in that pressure has an enormous advantage over the person who cannot. This is the 21st lesson. Comfort with silence is a skill that can be developed. It is not innate. It is not fixed. You can train yourself to tolerate discomfort, to sit with uncertainty, to resist the urge to fill every space with sound. And in doing so, you gain a form of power that is invisible but undeniable. But how does one develop this skill? How does one become comfortable with something that feels so fundamentally uncomfortable? The answer is practice, but not the kind of practice that most people think of. It is not about forcing yourself to be quiet. It is about changing your relationship with silence itself. Start small. Sit alone for 5 minutes with no distractions. Notice what happens. Notice the urge to reach for your phone, to turn on music, to do anything other than simply be. Do not judge the urge. Just notice it. Observe it the way you might observe a cloud passing in the sky. It is there. It will pass. You do not need to act on it. Do this daily. Gradually increase the time. Not to achieve anything, not to become enlightened or peaceful or any other goal. Simply to become familiar with your own mind, with the landscape of your inner world. Because that is what silence reveals. Not emptiness, but everything you have been running from. Every uncomfortable thought, every unresolved feeling, every truth you have been avoiding. This is the 22nd lesson. Silence is not the enemy. Your fear of what you will find in silence is the enemy. And the only way to defeat that fear is to face it, to sit with it, to discover that you can survive it. And once you know you can survive it, it loses its power over you. Now, let us examine the cultural dimensions of silence, because silence does not mean the same thing in all contexts, in all places, in all times. In some cultures, silence is respect. In others, it is rudeness. In some contexts, it is agreement. In others, it is the opposite. To understand silence, you must understand the cultural water you are swimming in. In many Eastern cultures, silence is valued as a sign of wisdom, of thoughtfulness, of depth. The person who speaks little is often respected more than the person who speaks much. There is a recognition that words are cheap, that true understanding often exists beyond language, that silence can be more eloquent than speech. But in many Western cultures, particularly American culture, silence is often interpreted as awkwardness, as lack of engagement, as something to be avoided. The person who is quiet is seen as shy, or unfriendly, or having nothing to contribute. There is a cultural bias toward extroversion, toward filling space with sound, toward equating communication with connection. Neither is right or wrong. They are simply different. But the person who understands these differences, who can read the cultural context and adjust accordingly, has a significant advantage. They can use silence in ways that are appropriate and effective, rather than accidentally offending or confusing. This is the 23rd lesson. Silence is not universal. Its meaning is constructed, negotiated, interpreted through cultural lenses. To master silence, you must first understand the rules of the game you are playing. Let us now turn to the silence of secrets, of things known but not spoken, of information that is power precisely because it is withheld. In any organization, in any relationship, in any social system, there are always things that some people know and others do not. And the management of this information, the decision of what to reveal and what to conceal, this is where much of the real power lies. Think about the executive who knows the company is about to be sold, but cannot tell anyone. Or the friend who knows about the affair, but has been sworn to secrecy. Or the child who witnesses something they should not have seen, and carries that knowledge like a weight. These silences are not passive. They are active. They require constant management, constant vigilance, constant energy. And they change the person who holds them. Because to know something that others do not know is to exist in a different reality. You see things they cannot see. You understand things they cannot understand. And you must constantly navigate the gap between what you know and what you can say, between your inner truth and your outer performance. This is the 24th lesson. Secrets are a form of power, but they are also a burden. The person who holds many secrets may appear powerful, but they are also isolated, trapped in a reality they cannot fully share. And over time, this isolation can become its own kind of prison. There is a woman who kept her mother's secret for 30 years. Her mother had another child, given up for adoption before she married, before the family that became the official family. Only this woman knew. Her mother made her promise never to tell, and she kept that promise. Through family gatherings where her siblings talked about being the oldest, the youngest, the middle child, all of it based on a lie. Through her mother's funeral, where people spoke of her as if they knew her, when they did not know the most important thing about her. And now her mother is gone, and the woman is left with this knowledge, this silence, this secret that no longer serves any purpose, but still cannot be spoken because a promise is a promise. But the weight of it is crushing her, because silence, when it is forced, when it is maintained out of obligation rather than choice, becomes toxic. It poisons from the inside. This is the 25th lesson. Not all silences should be kept. Some secrets are meant to be told. Some promises are meant to be broken. And knowing the difference, having the wisdom and courage to know when silence serves life and when it serves death, this is one of the most difficult judgments we ever have to make. Now let us explore the silence that exists in art, in music, in all forms of creative expression. Because here, silence is not just absence. It is an active element, a tool, a choice that shapes meaning and emotion. Think about the pause in a piece of music, the moment when all sound stops, and in that stopping, the music becomes more powerful, not less. The silence creates tension, anticipation, space for the next note to land with full impact. Without the silence, the music would be noise. The silence is what gives it shape, structure, meaning. Or think about the white space in a painting, the empty canvas that is not empty at all but essential to the composition. The silence between words in a poem, the pause in a performance, the beat of stillness that makes everything around it more vivid, more alive. This is the 26th lesson. Silence is not nothing. It is something. It is an active force, a creative choice, a necessary element in any form of expression. The artist who understands this, who knows how to use silence as skillfully as sound or color or words, creates work that resonates at a deeper level, that touches something primal in the audience. But let us return once more to the interpersonal, to the ways silence shapes our most intimate relationships. Because it is here, in the space between lovers, between parents and children, between friends, that silence reveals its full complexity, its full power, its full danger. There is a kind of silence that exists in long-term relationships, a comfortable silence that speaks of deep familiarity, of not needing to fill every moment with words. This is the silence of two people who have been together so long that they can communicate without speaking, who can sit in the same room doing different things and feel connected rather than alone. This silence is a gift, a sign of true intimacy. But there is another kind of silence in relationships, the silence that grows when people stop talking about what matters, when they retreat into safe topics, surface conversations, the logistics of daily life, when they stop sharing their dreams, their fears, their inner worlds. This silence is not comfortable. It is lonely. It is the slow death of connection, the gradual drift apart that happens so subtly that neither person notices until they wake up one day and realize they're living with a stranger. This is the 27th lesson. Silence in relationships must be chosen, not defaulted to. The comfortable silence of intimacy is earned through years of deep conversation, of vulnerability, of showing up for each other. But when silence becomes avoidance, when it becomes the path of least resistance, when it becomes easier to say nothing than to risk conflict or discomfort, that is when relationships begin to die. There is a couple who have been married for 20 years. They are polite to each other. They coordinate schedules. They manage the household, but they do not talk. Not really. Not about anything that matters. They have learned, through years of small hurts and disappointments, that it is safer to stay on the surface, safer to keep the peace, safer to maintain the illusion of harmony than to risk the chaos of honesty. And so they live in parallel, two people sharing a space, but not a life. And the silence between them grows thicker, heavier, more impenetrable with each passing year. Until one day, one of them will break, or they will simply continue this way until death, having spent decades together without ever truly knowing each other. This is the tragedy of silence, not the dramatic kind, not the weapon or the manipulation, but the quiet kind, the kind that creeps in slowly, that seems harmless, that is really just the absence of courage, the courage to be seen, the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to risk rejection in pursuit of real connection. This is the 28th lesson. The most dangerous silence is not the one that is wielded as a weapon. It is the one that is chosen out of fear. Fear of conflict, fear of vulnerability, fear of being truly known. This silence protects us from pain in the short term, but it guarantees loneliness in the long term. Now let us examine the silence of power structures, of hierarchies, of the ways that silence is enforced from above and internalized from below. In any system where power is unequal, silence becomes a tool of control. The powerful do not need to speak. Their silence is command, and the powerless learn to be silent, to not question, to not challenge, to accept their place in the order of things. Think about the employee who sees corruption but says nothing, because speaking up would mean losing their job. Or the student who witnesses bullying but stays silent, because intervening would make them a target. Or the citizen who knows their government is lying but does not protest, because the cost of resistance is too high. This is the silence of oppression. It is maintained not through force, though force is always there in the background, but through fear. Fear of consequences, fear of retaliation, fear of being alone in your resistance. And this fear is often justified, because the system punishes those who break the silence. It makes examples of them. It teaches everyone else that silence is survival. This is the 29th lesson. Silence is political. It is never neutral. To remain silent in the face of injustice is to side with the oppressor. But to speak requires privilege, requires safety, requires resources that not everyone has. And so we must be careful in our judgments. The person who stays silent may not be complicit. They may simply be surviving. But there is another dimension to this, one that is perhaps more insidious, the silence that is internalized, that becomes part of how we see ourselves, part of what we believe is possible. This is the silence that does not need to be enforced from outside because it has been built into our very identity. Think about the woman who never speaks up in meetings, not because anyone has told her not to, but because she has learned, through 1,000 small interactions, that her voice does not matter. Or the person from a marginalized community who does not apply for the promotion, not because they are not qualified, but because they have internalized the message that people like them do not belong in positions of power. This is the 30th lesson. The most effective form of control is the kind that makes people police themselves. When silence becomes internalized, when it becomes part of your identity, you do not need external enforcement. You silence yourself, and you do it so automatically, so unconsciously, that you do not even realize you are doing it. Breaking this kind of silence requires more than courage. It requires awareness. It requires recognizing the ways you have been shaped, the messages you have absorbed, the limitations you have accepted as truth. It requires questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself and your place in the world. There's a man who spent 40 years in a job he hated, never speaking up, never asking for what he wanted, never pursuing his dreams. Not because anyone stopped him, but because he had learned, somewhere along the way, that his desires did not matter, that his role was to be useful, to be reliable, to not make waves. And so he stayed silent, and his life passed. And when he finally retired, he looked back and realized he had never really lived. He had only existed, and the silence had been his prison, but he had been his own jailer. This is the tragedy of internalized silence. It robs us of our lives without us even noticing. It makes us complicit in our own diminishment. And the cruelest part is that we often do not see it until it is too late, until the years have passed and the opportunities are gone and all that remains is regret. But it is never too late to break the silence. Never too late to find your voice. Never too late to claim your right to be heard, to matter, to take up space in the world. The first step is simply recognizing that you have been silent. The second is asking why. The third is deciding that you deserve better. This is the 31st lesson. Silence is a choice. Even when it does not feel like a choice, even when it feels like the only option, it is still a choice. And if you can choose silence, you can also choose to speak. The question is not whether you can. The question is whether you will. Now let us turn to the silence of grief, of loss, of the things that hurt too much to speak about. This is a different kind of silence, not strategic or manipulative, but protective. It is the silence of a wound that is too fresh, too raw, too overwhelming to expose to the air. There is a woman who lost her child. For months after, people would ask how she was doing, and she would say, "Fine. I am fine. Thank you for asking." Not because she was fine, but because the truth was too big, too terrible, too sacred to share with casual acquaintances. The silence was not dishonesty. It was protection. Protection for herself, and protection for others who could not hold the weight of her grief. This is the 32nd lesson. Some silences are holy. Some pain is too deep for words. And in those moments, silence is not weakness or avoidance. It is dignity. It is the recognition that not everything can be shared, that some experiences are so profound that they can only be held in the quiet of your own heart. But there's a danger here too. The danger of staying silent for so long that the grief becomes a prison. The danger of protecting yourself so thoroughly that you cut yourself off from the very connection that could help you heal. Because while some silence is necessary, prolonged isolation and grief can become its own kind of death. This is the balance, knowing when to be silent and when to speak, knowing when to protect your wound and when to let others help you tend it, knowing when privacy is healing and when it becomes hiding. There is no formula for this. It is different for everyone, different for every loss. But the key is awareness, checking in with yourself, asking, am I silent because I need to be, or because I am afraid? Am I protecting myself, or am I punishing myself? Let us now explore the silence of meditation, of contemplation, of the deliberate choice to step away from the noise of the world and turn inward. This is perhaps the most misunderstood form of silence, often romanticized or dismissed, but rarely truly understood. Meditation is not about emptying the mind. That is impossible. The mind thinks, That is what it does. Meditation is about changing your relationship with your thoughts, about learning to observe them without being controlled by them. And this requires silence, not the absence of thought, but the absence of reaction to thought. Sit in silence and watch what happens. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, sensations arise, and the untrained mind immediately engages with them, follows them, gets lost in them. But with practice, you learn to simply notice. Oh, there's a thought about work. There's a feeling of anxiety. There's an itch on my nose. And you let them be. You do not fight them. You do not indulge them. You simply observe. This is the 33rd lesson. Silence teaches you that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes the thoughts. And this distinction, this realization, is profoundly liberating. Because if you are not your thoughts, then you are not controlled by them. You have choice. You have freedom. But this kind of silence is difficult. It requires discipline. It requires patience. It requires a willingness to sit with discomfort, with boredom, with all the things you have been running from your entire life. And most people cannot do it. They try meditation once or twice, find it uncomfortable or boring or frustrating, and give up. They never get to the other side, where the real benefits lie. Because on the other side of that discomfort is peace. Not the peace of having everything you want, but the peace of not needing everything you want. The peace of being okay with what is. The peace of knowing that you are enough, that you have always been enough, that you do not need to prove anything or achieve anything or become anything other than what you already are. This is the gift of silence. Not power over others, though that can be a byproduct, but power over yourself, mastery of your own mind, freedom from the tyranny of your own thoughts and emotions. And this, more than any external achievement, is what creates a life of genuine contentment. Now, as we near the end of our exploration, let us return to where we began, the room where no one speaks, yet everyone understands. You have been in this room many times. You will be in it many times again. But now, perhaps, you see it differently. You understand the currents beneath the surface. You recognize the games being played. You know that silence is never just silence. It is always something more. And with this knowledge comes responsibility. Because now you cannot claim ignorance. You cannot pretend you do not see the manipulation, the control, the ways that silence is used to harm. You also cannot pretend you do not see the beauty, the power, the ways that silence can heal and connect and transform. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you use it to manipulate others, to gain advantage, to control? Or will you use it to understand yourself, to connect more deeply, to create space for others to be fully themselves? This is the 34th lesson, and perhaps the most important. Knowledge is not neutral. It can be used for good or for harm, and the choice is yours. Every interaction, every moment of silence, every decision about when to speak and when to stay quiet is a choice about what kind of person you want to be, what kind of world you want to create. There is no judgment here. We all use silence in ways that are less than noble sometimes. We all manipulate, consciously or unconsciously. We all protect ourselves, sometimes at the expense of others. This is part of being human. The question is not whether you will ever use silence in ways that are selfish or harmful. The question is whether you will do so consciously, with awareness, with the ability to choose differently when it matters. Because that is what separates the master from the manipulator. The master uses silence with intention, with awareness, with respect for its power. They know when to wield it and when to set it aside. They know when it serves connection and when it serves only ego. They use it not to diminish others, but to create space for everyone to rise. The manipulator, on the other hand, uses silence reflexively, defensively, as a weapon to maintain control. They do not think about the impact. They do not consider the cost. They simply do what works, what gets them what they want, regardless of who gets hurt in the process. Which will you be? The choice is made not once, but every day, in every interaction. It is made in the moment when someone asks you a question, and you decide whether to answer or to let the silence stretch. It is made when someone hurts you, and you decide whether to speak your truth or to withdraw. It is made when you see injustice, and you decide whether to speak up or to stay safe in your silence. These are not easy choices. There's no right answer that works in every situation. But there is awareness. There is intention. There is the willingness to examine your motives, to question your patterns, to take responsibility for the impact of your silence, not just the impact of your words. This is the 35th lesson. Mastery of silence is not about technique. It is about character. It is about who you are when no one is watching, when no one is listening, when you are alone with your own conscience. It is about integrity, about alignment between your values and your actions, about using your power, including the power of silence, in service of something larger than yourself. And so, the curtain falls on this act, but the show continues inside each of us, in the silence of our thoughts. The mask we've analyzed today, you may know it well. You may wear it, or perhaps you see it in someone you love. The comment section below is not a place for judgment. It's our stage for confessions, a safe space for observers. Use that space to share your story. What mask did you have to wear to survive? We want to hear from you. And if you felt understood here, subscribe. Because here, you are not alone. Together, we'll keep unraveling human theater, one mask at a time. The next act is about to begin.